Crime Book Club. I am one happy lady. I finished today Heather's book that you are going to be talking about, that I'm about to give the wrong name for. Let me think. Unsolved is the new name.
Yeah,
got it right. Got it right. So do you want to show, have you got a copy of the book with you?
Yes,
you have.
indeed.
I've just seen it. I know you have. I'm too excited. I need to calm down. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Unsolved, and I will tag and pin us in the group?
Sure. So it is the first in the Cal Lovett series, which is about a true crime podcaster who travels to Aberdeenshire in Scotland to investigate the cold case of a woman who rode her horse into the woods 35 years ago and never came out. And that sort of investigation is really close to his heart because his own older sister, Margot, vanished when he was 9, and she has never been found since either.
I am just tagging and pinning us in the group so that the members know where to find us. As I've told you, I absolutely loved this book. Absolutely just devoured it. I have been left alone. People in the house, all the kids and my husband have kind of known today is not the day to ask mum for anything because I was finishing it today. I'm slightly distracted by typing names. Sorry, bear with me, because I want to actually look at you while I'm talking to you. There we go. I'm back. So I don't even know where to begin. I absolutely love this book. There's no other way to put it, and I want more people to be here to hear this. So we've literally just been tagged and pinned in the group, so people will be here soon.
Excellent.
And I really do need to calm down.
I'm
having an absolute fangirl moment. That's the thing. Fangirling over this book. So are you a true crime fan? Let's start with the obvious question.
Yes.
I don't know if fan is always the right word.
Yeah, so I discovered the true crime podcast when Serial came out in 2014, which was the sort of the thing that kicked off the craze. I suppose it's a really old medium. It's radio, really, by any other name. But I was fascinated by that first series, and that really did spark an interest in, I guess, a particular kind of true crime podcast. I like the ones where they're investigative, where somebody picks a cold case and goes back through the evidence. I'm really interested in how time changes perspective, how, yes, scientific developments can happen, but also people change. And there are so many cases where perhaps, time changes allegiances, people fall out, or people just gain a new perspective, and guilt kind of sits under all of that, and then they're willing to talk where maybe they weren't before. So yeah, I listen to quite a lot of true crime podcasts. I've got my favorites, and some of them definitely inspired the book. I have to be a bit careful. I don't know if you listen to them, but I think sometimes they can be so dark and they're so personal. And one of the things that I really like about them is that you hear the voices of the family and sometimes the victim, and it really gets under your skin, and you want a resolution and you want justice for people. And some of the podcasts manage to get it. That's kind of the wonderful thing for me. So yeah, that was really what was behind. I wanted to write a true crime podcast protagonist.
And that is something that you touch upon. You touch about the way that the world changes and how that changes people. And I'm going to be very, very careful with how I word anything that I ask, because the last thing I want is to give anything about this book away.
Yeah, I'll try and do the same.
I did like that aspect, that you really had the families at the centre of the whole thing. So yes, Cal is your main character, and yes, he has things going on in his life that are important about why he became a true crime podcaster, which we can talk about. That's fairly obvious within the book and the blurb. I've only seen the proof blurb, but
yeah, no, that's on the blurb, the fact that his sister disappeared when he was 9 years old. And her, she was such a strong, a kind of ahead of her time woman, and she was 18 when he was 9 years old, so there was quite a gap between them, and she was really influential in raising him. And I think the thing that she has in common with the cold case victim that Cal goes and investigates in this book is that they were both very kind of feisty, strong women at a time when maybe women weren't supposed to be that way. And so I think as well, the fact that they were like that possibly feeds into how they were looked for and how people treated their disappearance. And I know, particularly with maybe less with Cal's sister, but more with the victim, Layla, I was really keen that she wasn't just a straightforward, likable, vulnerable, you know, damsel in distress type character. She's really complicated and she lives a really complicated life. And it's a kind of feature of the time. I think if she'd been born 20 years later, she might have had a much easier time.
That is one of the, before we went live, I said to you, there were a few things that I wrote down. And I literally wrote down, women ahead of their time, fierce independence.
Yeah.
It's something that they had in common. And it really made me sit back and think just about what you're saying and how you've mirrored that and how you've made that very distinctive within the story.
Yeah.
And it's something really powerful.
The sister, certainly Cal's sister, because she was so influential when he was young, he's actually incredibly kind of modern man. You know, he treats women very equally. He sees, you know, he's a great person in that respect, but that's been founded through the strong women around him. You know, he's got a strong wife, he's got a strong daughter, and he's got all these different perspectives on women and what it is to be a woman and to be a victim, you know, in some of these cases. And yeah, he
really does treat everybody as he finds them.
Yeah,
he doesn't have any kind of prejudice towards anybody, but he's got a good spidey sense when he needs one as well.
Yeah,
so I think it was really interesting.
One of my favorite podcasts is a podcast called Someone Knows Something, which is a Canadian broadcaster called David Ridgen, and I just love his manner. And when I first started listening to the podcast, they're very, almost the language is quite flowery, and I was used to really news focused style, and at first I was kind of thrown by this, but I absolutely love his poetic kind of narrative, and I wanted Cal to have that. And also he has been known to take his teenage son on some of his cases with him, but he just has such a lovely way with people, and he knocks on the doors of all sorts of different types of people and persuades them to speak to him. And he's always really nice to their pets as well, so I kind of wanted Cal to be nice to pets.
The animals do seem to like him.
Yeah, he loves a cat or a dog.
We've got some hellos already, so hello everyone who's already watching. Somebody has asked, love the sound of the book, what drew you to set it in the world of podcasting? Now, we have talked about this, that was Kaz. Hello, Kaz. My partner in crime, the other author chat, another one of the author chat hosts. I'm not leaving Karen out. Sorry, Karen. I'm so giddy. Anyone who's just joined us now, I'm so giddy about this book. It's fantastic. So if you missed the first 5 minutes of me fangirling, be prepared for much, much more.
Yeah, so with setting it in the podcasting world, it was very much I wanted to write a podcast book. So that came first because I was just so interested in people. I think particularly some of the podcasts, the way that they draw their host in is really fascinating to me, because I think some of them start off as, oh, I'm just going to do this straightforward investigation for 8 weeks or whatever, and I'm going to produce, 8 episodes and I'll be done. And they just don't work like that. People get sucked in for years. And of course they go and they meet families and they get to know people and they start uncovering new things, and they can go on and on and on. And I really love that. So it was definitely, I want a podcast story. I really wanted an investigation to a cold case. And then I wanted to do somewhere quite remote. I'm very inspired by landscape, and I wanted it to be, so a lot of the ones I listen to are actually US or Canadian, which there's a lot of scope there for very wild places. But I didn't really feel that I knew those places well enough to write about them. But I grew up in Aberdeenshire. I moved there when I was 10, and a lot of my family are Scots. And so that landscape just jumped into my head, because we grew up exactly where this book is set. And I don't really name it in the book, but it's there's a hill in Aberdeenshire called Benahee. And I grew up in the foothills of Benahee, and I had all of this freedom to just literally go and roam whenever I wanted. So as a teenager, I would go on these walks and, these angst-filled teenage walks, and just to all these random little places that, perhaps a little knot of trees in the middle of some moorland. And I would think, God, wonder if anyone ever goes there or has ever been there. And I was surrounded by places like that. And so that was a huge inspiration for the book. And that gave me that wild kind of option where somebody could ride into the woods and not be seen again, potentially.
Before I go to the next thing I was going to say, Sam Holland's saying it is a fantastic book.
No.
The 20 actually is on my list. I'm going to go and buy it tomorrow. Going book shopping with my friend Hayley. So we're
a fantastic book. Sam and I shared a book
next week,
last week, and honestly, the 20 is, yeah, it's chilling and brilliant. Really, really good.
Oh, I can't wait. Can't wait, because I know this is Sam's darker side that I'm getting with the next book. So
it really is. It really is.
I'm looking forward to it. One of the things I wanted to touch on is the fact that one of the reasons I not resonated with, thankfully. I liked Cal so much and trusted him because he's been through this. And I think that was an important thing. I wonder, would I have felt the same about Cal if he was just an investigative journalist? Can't get my words out. Slow down again. Would I have felt the same? Would I have felt as connected to him in that way?
No,
it's a really clever thing that you've done.
It's only as you're saying it that, yeah, I mean, I suppose I was interested in what might drive somebody to do these kinds of things, but also I suppose it avoids him coming across in a voyeuristic way, because he really does know how it feels. And I think it gives him that connection with the families. But I think what's important throughout the book, and by the end of the first book, certainly, is what he has got back from the family that he bonds with, because he is kind of invited in by Layla's parents, who think they know what happened to her and just want it proved. And the mother is much keener on him coming than the father. But I think there's, as their relationship develops, he takes away as much at the end of the book as they do, really.
Yeah. And you just touched on the fact that this is the start of a series.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So tell us a little bit about what you can tell us so far.
So book 2 is currently called Unburied, and is due out early next year. It's written, it's in edits, and there is another cold case. It's set on the west coast of Scotland, that one, and there is a shooting at the beginning of the book that took place 15 years ago. So it mirrors this book in that it's 2 timelines. You see what happened at the time that the case originally happened, and then you see Cal being drawn into investigating it. And then there is a 3rd book coming as well that I'm just starting work on now.
I'm so excited that there's at least 3.
Yes.
And I will be bombarding Canelo for more. And you. Yeah, you're not going to get rid of me. Poor you. So I do think, actually, now you've said that there is something about certain books that I really fall in love with that have this kind of different landscape. I've got The Birdwatcher here by William Shaw above my head. And it's a beautiful book, and there are dual timelines. There's a really gorgeous landscape. There's a cold case. They're the kind of things that really, that just really grip me. They're the things that really intrigue me. And when somebody writes one the way that you have written one, it's so satisfying. And I don't think it matters, halfway through the book. I couldn't have put it down. There's not a chance. Instead, I just about managed to get my hair brushed and get sat down in time tonight. But just the initial, just your writing style, everything about it is just so glorious.
Thank you. I think the podcast book does lend itself to like a really interesting way of doing it, and there's lots of people now that have written them, and so I've been quite enjoying when I was writing this one, until I found my way of doing it. I kind of didn't really want to read too much of other people's, but now that I've got my sort of method that I'm going to be sticking to for the series, I kind of feel quite comfortable now going out and reading everyone else's podcast books, and I'm really enjoying mining the seam of them.
Do you have favourite characters from this book? I'm aware that obviously it's a series. There will be some returning characters. There might not be others that come back for various reasons. There could be, different settings and things. You're obviously going to have some of the same cast. There's some that can't come back for various reasons. But I've gone off on a tangent. Who have you really enjoyed writing in this book? And did anyone surprise you as you started writing them?
Yeah, and so I'm quite sort of attached to all of them, I suppose. But I mean, Layla was very easy to write. She just kind of fell off. I was going to say the pen, but it wasn't a pen. It's a keyboard. And I think there's quite a lot of anger in her, and there's quite a lot of, also she waitresses at a hotel. And when I was a teenager living in that area, there's a country house hotel there, and I waitress there for about 5 years on my Saturdays and my evenings. And so I found it quite fun, although the hotel that she works in is quite a lot darker, and none of the things that happened to her happened to me.
Thank goodness to hear that.
I enjoyed going back to the kitchen and like writing the kitchen scenes and remembering what it was like being part of that. I think when you're waitressing and you're in a really busy kitchen, it can be really hard and really exhausting, and like people get grumpy, but actually there's also quite a lot of camaraderie and there's a real team spirit, and I kind of like that. I mean, I think a lot of people like his daughter, and I do really like his daughter. I also quite like, there's a forensic anthropologist who he meets, who's quite feisty and funny, and I like her.
I like her. I like both of them. Yeah, I'm with you actually. I can't think of anyone in particular that I could say that I dislike. I think there are different elements of people. Everyone has a bad day every now and again. You know, they feel like they felt realistic people fell off the page.
Yeah, I suppose
it made it look very easy to write these people, and I'm guessing it's not as easy as it looks.
The person who I suppose is completely and utterly unlikable is the person that Cal interviews early on in the book, because it's not giving away too much to say that he manages to land an interview with a serial killer who has never before granted an interview, and he goes to Broadmoor and meets this guy. And yeah, I had to definitely go back over him and make him more evil a few times, which was quite, he's the really unredeemable person in the book.
One thing I will say is it's interesting with Dubois how you refer to him as a younger man, and then you kind of give a snapshot of how he looks in prison, and the stark contrast in that. But that sometimes, you know, Cal can just see this bit of him that comes out, and you think, oh, there you are, you're the man that went and did these things.
Yeah,
you know, this charm comes out of him, but it's like it's an off charm now, but Cal can still see through it, and that was very, very clever.
It's like a dangerous charisma, isn't it, that you can see how somebody did what they did. Yeah,
and you've done that in so few words. You know, he's not in the book a great deal, but we learn a lot about him in very few words, and I thought that was really well done.
Oh, thank you.
I could just sit here for a week and talk about every aspect of this book. So when how long was it from start to finish for writing this one? So Kaz has asked about research. Did you have to do much? Obviously, you've talked about the setting and you've talked about listening to different podcasts. What about the family dynamics within it?
In terms of research, I didn't have to do a lot of research. Probably actually for the second book, I've had to do a bit more to learn about guns and sort of some legal things and some medical sides of things. This one didn't require too much on that regard. I did spend quite a bit of time just doing the sort of checking, like some of it is set in Aberdeenshire at a time of the oil, where there's a lot of oil entertaining, and there was an oil crash and things. So I had to do a little bit of research and moving dates around when I realized that my corporate entertaining wasn't going to be very plausible just after the oil crash. So yeah, there wasn't too much kind of research needed. Definitely more as I'm writing different things now.
I'm just laughing because Sam said, I love Cal and have quite a crush on him. She does this. We've talked about crushes on different characters. Tell us some more, Sam. Who would play him in a film of the book? Have you got that far yet? I can never put names to faces. I'm dreadful.
No, I am like the polar opposite of, I know Sam is so visual and she has all of these, you know, pictures on her phone of her characters, and I find it even really difficult to picture him how I would picture him, never mind put his head on somebody else. So anyone in Hollywood who would like to play him is absolutely fine.
Yeah, come and line up, and you and Sam can sit and have a look and see who fits the bill. Sam, have you got any ideas for who it could be? But yeah, I have seen Sam's wall with the different all the post-it notes and the pictures and the different things. Goodness knows what she's going to be telling me next week.
Trying to do this at some point because I'm really interested in her methods. Yeah, I wonder if I could adopt some of them, but no, Cal is just a very much a kind of a brain creation, I suppose, because sort of the people who he's based on are these true crime podcasters who I haven't seen what they look like. So for me, it's more about the concepts and the ideas of them than the actual physical them.
Are you tempted to Google them now you're thinking about it to see what they look like?
So I did do
or would you really rather not?
No, I have done a little bit of Googling, and actually that does play into the research question, because I did sort of check a little bit about microphones and things. I didn't want much technology to kind of intrude, but I did do just a little bit of checking about, you know, what they would take with them and so on. But yeah, no, I have occasionally sort of Googled them to find things out about episodes and things. Another one I really like is Up and Vanished. I've been listening to that recently. And that, I think the guy that does that has become quite a celebrity, really. He's got his own production company doing things. But it's very, very strange having listened to, I mean, over 25 episodes, I think, in the first series of that. And then to look at the pictures from the courtroom and things of the people who are eventually taken to trial, and yeah, to put faces to the voices.
Yeah, and I suppose when you're looking at true crime as well, and you've got, obviously you're going to handle it in a different way in your book because it is crime fiction. When we're looking at crimes and you're seeing the people, you're seeing the victims' faces, you're seeing the criminals, and then you're seeing the podcasters, that's it's quite a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think the thing about the podcast as well is that often you take them with you. So, I mean, for the first series of Serial, I did actually sit on my sofa and listen to it. But ever since then, I have them on when I'm running or I'm cooking or cleaning and just going. And I tend to listen to them in my life. And so these voices kind of find their way into day-to-day life. I can still remember where I was when I was listening to certain episodes of things, because they really do. Some of these stories are so heartrending, and you're listening to the voices of their loved ones telling you about them. And I think podcasts offer a really amazing chance to bring back some cases that have been, you know, for no fault of anyone, you know, they get shunted to the side in favor of new things. And I think if you are somebody who's left with questions over, I mean, I can't imagine the torture of being left with that sorts of mysteries over 30 years or something. And I think there's a case on the BBC today of a man who's just been convicted of a killing of a girl 30 years ago. I mean, that family have been living with that. So yeah, I think that is one of the really powerful things about podcasts, is that you bring them into your world. Yeah.
Is it quite nice to be able to, after listening to so many, put some in your own hands and be able to give them the outcome that you find satisfying in whatever way that is?
Yeah, I think it's just human nature to want answers, isn't it? And so many times, I mean, some of these podcasts do result in real life convictions and things, and those are incredibly satisfying and amazing. But a lot of the time, you know, they don't close it off, but they get to the end of the series and say, well, that's as far as we can take it now, or we think this has happened, but we can't prove it. And the lovely thing about crime fiction is that you can give people those resolutions, and you can give those answers, and you can deal with the people that think they've got away with it, haven't got away with it. And I do like that thing about podcasts now, is that if you're a criminal that thinks you've got away with something that you did 25 years ago, previously maybe you just had to worry about the police reopening your case. Now you've got to worry about anybody with an iPhone who's going to come along and try and work out what you've done. That's quite nice to give them that little extra bit of worry.
Yeah, it really is. And I like the fact that from other cold cases, you know, somebody at some point had the foresight to sit down and think, right, I'm just going to swab some of these things, and who knows what technology will come up with in the future. And because of that, things are being solved. Yeah. Which is just, thank goodness people, you know, think outside the box.
Yeah, I think in my second book particularly, I mean, I don't have a lot of the police in my books because I'm not great at police procedural stuff, but I didn't want it, particularly in my second book, there to be a suggestion that the police had done anything wrong, because I think some of the time there is corruption or ineptitude or things, but sometimes it's just, you know, things are too well hidden at that time, and it needs time to sort of flush things out. So yeah, the second book particularly, I mean, there's really very little in it, but I wanted the police to sort of hand over things and be willing to cooperate, because it's in everyone's interests. And I do think there are probably police officers out there carefully filing things away, knowing that maybe one day it will result in something.
Yeah, it's something as small as a feeling, something feeling off. You can't do anything with the feeling, but you can write it down.
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
You can store the evidence well, because so many of these convictions come down to, you know, evidence being stored properly, chain of custody, all of those sorts of things being done correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that, the detail of it, that if the chain of custody, chain of command for evidence, not custody, for evidence, is done correctly, then that means that 20 years down the line, you've got more of a chance of actually proving something. You know, you're removing reasonable doubt in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a bit more about Layla. I'm aware that we don't want to give anything away, but just Layla as a person, I found fascinating. She's this young woman. She's in, you know, her friends have all gone off to uni and they're all moving away, and she didn't get the grades to go and do anything. She doesn't know what to do. She knows what she wants to do, but getting that is another thing. And she finds other ways to relieve her frustration.
Yeah.
You know, other ways to find excitement and feel free. And just every bit of that just felt so empowering. She was finding this, and she doesn't come across as very likable all the time. And I think that's good. She's, you know, at her age, I think that's a good thing. I just really like how you've done that and how you've drawn her. She just feels like, I need to have a word with this young woman and say, just calm down, you know, this is how we'll do it. But she doesn't have that person.
It's difficult because you sort of see the mistakes she makes, but then she's so trapped as well. And she doesn't really fit the mold that she's in, and she's messed around at school. She's not really looked ahead. And then she suddenly looks up and finds that she's stuck without really prospects or money, and other people have gone off and done things. And she's just, you know, stuck. And she is promiscuous but angry and sort of, hurting at heart. And I think, you know, it would have been nice for her. She would have found a way, you know, but obviously events mean that, we know she's not around to start with.
I like how you mirrored the wildness of the horses, of Ruby the horse, was completely, you know, mirroring Layla as well. And they both felt constricted in different ways. It was really nice to see her and Ruby, again, I'll say Ruby is the horse that she's just really close to, and she can really calm Ruby. And they both have this untamed spirit, but then both find joy in kind of galloping and, you know, being out in the countryside and away from the people and away from the buildings. Just the two of them running together. It was just gorgeous.
The only time that she's free. Yeah.
I loved that. That must have been really fun to write.
Yeah. I mean, again, because that's where I grew up. I did ride horses in my teenage years. And so, it's kind of, I think with Scotland doesn't have the same sort of trespassing laws and things that England would have. So there's a lot more freedom to just get on a horse and go and explore. And it's quite, but then the landscape, although it's beautiful, can be quite bleak and brutal as well. So, yeah.
I will say as well, while I'm thinking of it, that you did say that at the back of not the proof copy, there is is it the first chapter or is it the prologue?
The prologue and the first chapter, because the prologue is the sort of view of the victims, or the crime, should I say, for the second book. And then there's a sort of first chapter of what Cal is up to when we join him there. So
it's like a quick catch up and then plunge him into more depths of despair, I imagine.
He's getting himself into trouble from the off. So,
So from the start of the series, how long has it taken you to get to this point?
In terms of how long it took to write, I think it took me about because I was on submission with another book that didn't actually sell. And so I then kind of cracked on while I was on submission. I think it probably took me about a year to write, and then my agent and I worked on it for about 6 months together of just sort of toing and froing with some edits, and then she went out with it. The second book's been quite a lot quicker. I think I knew, so I sort of wrote that in 6 months, and then we're in the editing process. It's probably taken another 6 months to get to almost done there. So, but yeah, it's much easier the second time because obviously I know half of the characters. I know all of the Cal side of things in his life. It was just having a new case and some new characters there who would, again, it's a very different character he works with and family he works with, but it really does hit on another part of himself, and he's very drawn to them for different reasons. So yeah, that was quite good. So yeah, just the last couple of years really on these characters.
Do you think any of the ones in the drawer will see the light of day? Are you going to mind them for parts, or
I do have
so
the one before this, I definitely, there's a series there. I think the problem with that was it was very, very dark, and I didn't intend it necessarily to be as dark as it came out, but I started it before the Me Too movement, and it was very much a kind of, in the times where people would almost blame girls who were groomed, you know, sort of mid to late teens, who are actually now we would recognize as still children, and are owed a duty of care. I think sometimes in the past they were seen, you know, as being promiscuous or being to blame in some way. And I kind of wanted to tell a story of someone who was groomed and how that might happen. And it was very, very dark. But the character who was investigating that was a police officer who was on medical leave, and had a very interesting quirk that I would quite like to revisit. So I would probably go back to those. But I've got lots of new ideas as well. So it's just finding the time to write, yeah, different
Leslie's
things.
saying she loves dark, and I can attest to the fact that Leslie likes dark books. There are some books that me and Leslie have discussed where she said to me, no, Sam, I don't think you should read that one. Yeah. And I haven't. Doesn't mean I won't ever, but she knows me quite well, and she knows what I like, and we've got a good feel for the things that each other would like or maybe wouldn't like. So if Leslie tells me it's too dark, probably is. I do read dark books. I don't have an issue with them, but I'm well aware that some are probably not written with me in mind.
Yeah, no, I can find some things too much. It does depend what it is, and I think the same goes for listening to true crime podcasts sometimes.
Of course, yeah.
Is that they do kind of worm their way into your thoughts, and sometimes I kind of have to stop for a little while and have some weeks or months without listening to things that are so dark, because yeah, it does sort of weigh you down sometimes, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. I know that a few years ago, my mum would buy different magazines, you know, and some of them have got true crime things in them.
Yes.
And there was one, I won't say the story in particular because I might sit here and sob, but it was awful. And I read it and I thought, why did I carry on reading that? And I haven't picked up one of the magazines since.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a time when there were too many similarities between my life and this woman's life. I don't know, but
some things just hit you as well, don't they? I don't know what it is about some cases that they just strike at some sort of personal connection or something that chimes, and it's different for all of us. But yeah, it's like when you're a child and you read something that you sort of regret having read. You can't really unread something or unwatch something on TV. So it's sort of protecting yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you watch things like this? Is it just the podcasts, or do you watch true crime? Do you watch things like that?
I quite like the documentaries, and the sort of true crime documentaries on Netflix and things. I'm not, I sort of don't watch them all the time, but if there's a good one, I enjoy it. I'm sort of, again, it's similar. Like there's only so much you can kind of take of them. There have been some quite distressing ones that I kind of wished I hadn't, but yeah, no, I do watch them.
What about other things that you read? Can you read crime while you're writing crime?
Yeah, I can. I reading very much inspires me. I suppose you have to be careful not to sort of take on someone else's voice or whatever, but crime is, I read quite widely. So crime is like a key area of reading for me. It's definitely not the only one. So, but I do find that I write better and I write more if I'm reading a lot. Reading a lot is a sign that I'm kind of in the zone. And I'll often, you know, you get that feeling and you read an amazing book and you kind of come out of it thinking, oh my God, I could never write something that good. But at the same time, you feel sort of galvanized to have a go, you know? So yeah, definitely. I think life, because, you know, I have 2 children, a dog, a day job. And sometimes I really get in the doldrums of a good few weeks where I haven't really read very much. And yeah, I don't like that feeling at all. I like it when I'm binging.
Well, I absolutely binged this book. So, and that's how I felt the whole time. You've literally described how I felt today, that I don't, how can I write something like this? How does somebody do this? But at the same time, oh, I really want to go again.
Yeah. Yeah, I love reading books like that. It's just, yeah, quite. I read what was it recently? The Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent, which
I haven't read it yet, but everybody's raving about it.
Yeah, it's one to read and then talk to someone else who's read it, because I definitely had some thoughts at the end that I wanted to. I got a couple of friends who were going to read it. And I was like, hurry up, because I really want to talk about this. But the writing's just exquisite, and the character is, yeah, it's really, really incredible.
Me and Kaz always say, for me in particular, if I want to read something, I have to book the person for interview. So that's how I got your book, because there was a batch of books that Kaz received or was going to receive, and she said to me and Karen, right, these are all of the blurbs. We didn't know who'd written what. These are all of the blurbs. Have a look. And I picked yours straight off. Yours was the top of all the ones I received, and I really wanted to read it. I know I was right. I love it when I'm right.
I love the fact when people send you books as well, because I'm starting to get sort of proofs and things, and I'm lucky that friends will send me things, and there's nothing quite like getting a book early, is there, to make you yeah such a treat.
I will be hounding Canelo for the second book in the series the second they have it. I would very much like to read it. I'm going to be really impatient with this one, I can tell. Somebody has asked, what is the day job?
Oh, so I for many years was a business journalist. I worked in B2B magazines about exciting things like commercial property and debt and credit. And so about 10, 11 years ago, when I had my second child, I decided I didn't want to sort of go back to the job I was doing, and I went freelance. And it's kind of evolved. So I still, mainly now, I don't do journalism. I tend to do corporate writing for people that I used to write about when I was a journalist. So I feel quite lucky, because I had quite a good network of financial businesses, and it's a particular niche. It's sort of like debt and debt collection and insolvency and those sorts of areas. And so I'm quite lucky that I've got some clients that I love working for, and it's writing, always writing with me. But it's very satisfying, because you can get it right and you can do it in a day, and it's so different. Fiction, which is subjective, and yeah, I do quite enjoy being given something to do, and then so that is, it's also very flexible. So I'm really lucky, because I work for myself, and I can manage my time. It does mean when I'm really, really busy, it's difficult to squeeze writing in. But you know, if I'm not so busy, I can do it in the middle of the day. There's nobody sort of standing over me saying I can't.
I've got to admit, I like being freelance. It does make a real difference. It really does. Laura's saying she loves Dark too. Though one scene in Joe Callahan's In the Blink of an Eye got her. Think it was because it was the audio version. Had to distract herself looking for ducks on canal on way to work.
Yeah,
that's one way of doing it.
Oh,
I haven't read it, so I have no idea. But when I do, Laura, I'm guessing that I'll be able to message you and say, "Oh my word, that was it. That was the bit, wasn't it?"
I definitely have that on my radar. I've heard really, really good things about it. So no, I think, I mean, I tend to listen to podcasts rather than audiobooks. I think as I read quite quickly, audiobooks sort of, I don't tend to go for them as much. But there was one time when I was listening to a really dark and violent podcast, and I was on a run, because I used to do ultra marathons, so I'd be out running for hours, and I was running down this little disused railway line and listening to something horrible, and in the middle of nowhere, and then this guy in a hoodie sort of emerged from the bushes, and I'd so convinced myself I was about to be sort of a victim. The poor man was just out for a walk. But yeah, it really does, it's quite powerful, isn't it? And
I can imagine that being quite disturbing for both of you. Apparently I'd love it. So that's Strange Sally Diamond that Leslie's saying. She's asked what your favourite reads so far are this year.
So that is one of them.
I did warn you that somebody would ask this.
Yeah, no, that is, I'm prepped for this. So the other one that I've read this, I think I've read it this year, that really blew me away was Notes on an Execution by Daniel Kanker. Okay. That's just incredible, that book.
I've got that ready to read as well, but when I'll get to it.
Honestly, prioritize it. It's amazing. I love the fact that it is about a killer and he's in it, but the women around him are much more important, and it's the story from their perspective. And yeah, I absolutely love that. I'm really enjoying Stacey Willingham's books, actually. She's another one. So she wrote A Flicker in the Dark, and then her second one, All the Dangerous Things, is out in hardback now, and it's a podcast one. So yeah, I had that kind of on my radar. But yeah, I really, really like, they're very atmospheric, and yeah, she's somebody now I would definitely just buy her books. But so many good crime fiction books out there. It's amazing.
It's really difficult, isn't it? So when you find one, I mean, I'm really lucky. I get to read so many great books, and but when you find one that just hits right the way that Unsolved did, it's just that really lovely moment where you just wrapped in a book. Yeah. It doesn't really matter what is even happening in it. If it's engaging, it's just brilliant. Are we keeping Cal? I'm involving myself now, the royal way. Are you keeping Cal in Scotland for the next case?
Yeah, very much based in, although he lives in the Midlands, they very much have a Scottish bent. So the next one is set on the west coast of Scotland, and the area he is sort of inspired by places I've been on the west coast, like Plockton and the Shield Peninsula, but I haven't I've used creative license, and I've created my own place, really, because I just wanted that feel and that remote, quite a different landscape. But yes, he's sort of on holiday there and gets drawn into something, is how he ends up over there. And then the third book is in a different part of Scotland, actually, but there'll be an Aberdeen connection because of some of the people he's met in the first book.
I suppose the really interesting thing, because of where you've based him, as you say, in the Midlands, you really could take him anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, if you decide that, say, 5 books he visits Scotland, you could literally have the next 5 anywhere you wanted.
Yeah. It's I guess because the nature of his job as well, he can go where the stories are. And
he's always going to find something wherever he turns up. Sometimes you read a book and you think, you sent them on holiday and it's all very good, but this could have been done just where they lived. There was nothing special about the area, but yours didn't feel like that.
Yeah, he's I think Aberdeenshire is a place that there's a few crime authors who write books set in Aberdeen, but not as many as maybe some other Scottish locations, and probably not necessarily the countryside bit of Aberdeen. So there's quite a lot of Aberdeen scope, I think, and it's quite fun revisiting those areas. And yeah, I still go and see family there. I went to school in Aberdeen city, but we always lived out in the countryside. So there's all sorts of little places that could be significant.
We should talk about where you're speaking from today as well, while we're here. Yeah. And what you've been up to today.
Yeah, so I'm at Crime Fest in Bristol, that's why I'm in a slightly anonymous hotel room. I was on a panel this morning, which was really fun, about technology, the use of technology in crime fiction. And I'm doing one for debut authors on Sunday. But it's quite strange being here, because a year ago I was here and I didn't have a book deal. And it was the week before Critchlow offered to publish Unsolved, what's become Unsolved. So yeah, it's very, very strange being back here, because I was probably then stealing myself for maybe not getting a publishing deal and feeling fairly low. And now I'm on a panel, which is really weird, but lovely.
But I bet last year you had lots of people really encouraging you.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have got to know a group of authors. I introduced myself to somebody who shared the same agent as me a few years ago, Victoria Selman, and she kind of drew me into this group of crime writers who, and I just felt like such an imposter for a number of years because I was the non-published one, but the amount that I have learned from them is just incredible.
Victoria is lovely.
I mean, there's this whole group of them, and Sam is one of them too. And just watching, they're all much more experienced, and some of them have got a lot of books under their belt, and just to understand the way publishing works, what's normal, the fact that it's quite roller coastery. So even people who are amazing bestsellers and have had lots of success might have, a difficult year for whatever reason. And I think it's kind of opened my eyes and made me quite realistic about what it's like in a good way. But they're so supportive. I think other crime writers are just generally really, really supportive. It's such a nice community of people.
Yeah, we say this all the time, that people who write crime seem to be, you get it all out on the page, you are the nicest people in the world.
I remember when I was on my course, I did a writing course at Writers and Artists, like 10 weeks. I did a Wednesday evening there with the author Bill Ryan. And at the time I was writing another book that hasn't seen the light of day, and I didn't think it was crime. And I remember sitting there saying, well, I don't know what genre I am. And everyone said crime. And I said, yeah, but are you sure? And they said, crime. And everyone was just sat yelling crime at me. And I was really happy, because crime writers are really nice, and there's loads of crime events, and it's kind of like being part of a world. So yeah, I was very happy to to hear that it was crime.
It really is part of a different world. My life's changed completely since I kind of discovered the UK Crime Book Club quite by accident on Facebook. Wasn't sure what I was looking for one day, typed crime into Facebook or crime books, and found this wonderful group.
Yeah.
And the crime world, the legal fictional crime world, is just so welcoming, so inviting, and there's room for everyone. Nobody's kind of trying to jostle each other out of the way. You're all supporting each other.
Yeah, and people giving blurbs and reading, drafts, and just giving general advice. It's really, really lovely.
When you said giving blurbs, then my head automatically finished it as giving blood, and then you said blurbs. I was like, right, okay, yes.
No blood yet, but
Leslie's saying, good to hear you waxing lyrical about the book. Which book, Leslie? We've talked about a few. Is it me? Is it me talking about your book? Maybe that's what she's saying. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. And as I've said, I loved the way all of the characters, the relationships within it, I absolutely love. And you see different things evolve in different ways. I like all of the different locations that you've used, all of the places, and the way you've described it as kind of based on somewhere that you've grown up and things that you've seen, but you've amalgamated what works for it. Did you actually plot this out? I know Marion Todd is a Canelo author, and she is a notoriously famous plotter. She's offered me loads of advice, and I keep saying I'll message her about it, and then I get caught up in more books and never
she's
do
Mrs. Spreadsheet, isn't she? She's really organised.
She's fantastic. Where do you fall on that the line of plot to pants?
So I'm trying to get much more plotting. I mean, I think you sort of do it at some point, the plotting. It's just when you do it in the process. I mean, I very much used to pants, but then what I was left with was having to go back in the end and kind of reverse engineer a plot afterwards. Now I really do try and have much more of an idea of where I'm going. And I really love the Save the Cat Writes a Novel book. And I kind of use that. As you got a copy there?
Somewhere. I'm almost loath to actually touch anything.
I have such a battered copy of that book. And I'm not sort of religious about it and following it to that. There it is. Yeah, it's beautiful.
With a notebook as a bookmark.
And I will return to that and try and make sure the beats. I think because my writing's become, as I've moved more firmly into crime, it is so dependent on plot and pace, and probably those in the past and structure are the things that I've maybe been less good at. So I'm spending quite a lot of time trying to get better at them and really trying to cut out extraneous things. I think even, the second book may be a bit more pacey than the first one, just to try and get better at doing that. Because I mean, I love language and I love a good description, and not everyone wants, 10 pages on how pretty a mountain looks, although I quite like those sorts of things. I have to resist that urge.
I can tell, actually, now I think about it, and I was thinking about it while I was reading it, you can kind of see how pared back everything is. There's not loads and loads of description. You've got enough description, you've not got tons of it. And if I was writing something like that, I know how much I would put in that would be too much. And it isn't. It's all kind of, I'm thinking of like a plaited bread. You're just kind of bringing things in from the side all the time. I don't know where the breads come from.
I quite like that though.
What a random thing.
It might sort of seem like that now, but definitely I have overwritten it so badly. And had to take something like 10,000 words out of the first quarter because there was just so much extraneous. Yeah, I need to get better at that, and maybe plotting plotting more carefully will help me do that. But I think I will always veer off, I think, because you start writing the characters and then you find that you're going in a slightly different direction. So for me, it's a constant process of write a bit, stop, see where we are. Is it all still going to fit together and work together? Carry on, you know, I'll do that. And although I do all of my writing on the computer, when I'm doing any plotting and planning, I will stop and I'll get bits of paper and coloured pens and I'll lay it all out on the floor or use a board on the wall and just try and go, okay, right, yeah. Because I'm trying to get it in my head. I think it's really often when you're writing, you're sort of feeling your way. But when you have these golden moments where you see your whole book and you're like, oh, yes, that's what I'm trying to do. And it'll vanish in another minute, but you sort of live for those moments of clarity.
I think it's really interesting that you wrote so much and then what you've chosen to cut out mustn't have been needed at all. I don't think there's a wasted word.
Whole chapters have gone, like, honestly. But I love that. And I think that's my first job as a journalist, was being a sub-editor, cutting other people's copy to fit. And so, yeah, I really love cutting and I don't fear it at all. I'm quite happy to slice things out.
Have you been asked to cut anything that you didn't want to?
No, not at all, actually. The whole process with Canelo has been really, really good. So my editor is Louise Cullen, and she went on maternity leave a week after.
I love Louise Cullen. I interviewed her a few months ago. It's probably longer than that now.
Yeah, she's been on this
yeah,
year.
Adore her.
Yeah, so she did the structural edits for me and gave them to me, and we chatted them, you know, they all made perfect sense. And then she went off, and so ever since then I've had different kind of editors, and everyone's just been brilliant, really. There's never been anything that I thought, oh no. Yeah, they've all just seemed to get the book. It's lovely.
It very much feels like a Canelo book. They're all excellent. There is a certain thing about a Canelo book, you know. I mean, I'll quickly show this one of Sheila's.
Yeah.
So Black Valley Farm, and
I've got that on my Kindle.
I absolutely love Sheila Bugler. Anyone who's ever seen me talk about any books will know that she is always on my favourite books list and my favourite people list. I absolutely adore her. And that's one of the ones I'll be reading very, very soon because I've got her for interview. And I can't wait. I can't wait to read it. I almost don't want to read it because then I'll have read it.
And it'll be gone. Yeah. Yeah. You see, that's the hard thing, isn't it? I mean, so Louisa Scar's series, Butler and West, I absolutely love those.
I loved Butler and West series.
But because she's a friend, the best thing was when I finished, I think it was the third one, and I sent her a message going, oh, I loved it and I've got to wait so long. And she sent me a Word document with a draft of the fourth book, like literally by return. And that's probably like one of the best moments I've had in the whole writing experience, was, yeah, finishing a book and then the author sends you the draft of the next one. It's like, oh, made.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a really nice thing to know that you're not quite, we still have, you know, often as long to wait in between books as people have, because if I get a preview copy of a book and then I get the preview, you know, it's still a year in between, but it's, I still don't have to wait for it to come out sometimes, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
it's really nice. I'm realizing that we've got 5 minutes left.
Yeah,
that hour has absolutely disappeared. So tell us what you're going to do for the rest of the evening. Is it too late for more panels now? I'm assuming so.
Yeah, I think I am going to go and meet up with some author friends and, yeah, enjoy the evening before more panels tomorrow. I'm not speaking tomorrow, so I can then just enjoy the panels tomorrow. But there's so many. It's a really great program, actually. It's really fun to sit and listen to everyone's.
It looks great. I've not done Crime Fest yet. I'm slowly adding to my repertoire of where I actually get to each year. Yeah. So yeah, at some point I will get to Bristol, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, really nice atmosphere.
So give us a quick recap of I keep going to call it Unsolved, of Unspoken.
Unsolved.
No, Unsolved is the right one now.
There we go.
Oh, I'm confusing myself. We're going to have the title did change.
Yeah, it did. It did.
So I got the wrong one.
And then we changed the title. So yeah, Unsolved is the one.
Yeah. And I am easily confused, as we are finding. Just remind everybody what it's about and where we can go and buy it. They're going to be, you should be investigating this book, Laura. You will love it. She absolutely will. This is Laura's thing, definitely. I'm going fangirly again.
Yeah,
so it's where they can find it.
Yeah, the usual places, ebook or paperback.
Can people get signed copies from you or from anywhere, or are there any bookshops with signed copies?
Yeah, so I'm sure we can arrange. There's some at Crime Fest just now that are signed, but yeah, I will happily sign copies for anyone who wants.
Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for coming to us from your hotel room as well.
Oh, no, this has been great.
That's quite the commitment.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And please come back for the second book. I cannot wait. Absolutely can't wait. Thank you to everyone for your questions and your comments as well. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to next time.